It wasn't supposed to be anything big, just another regular Friday night, like any other. The only difference was that my wife, Fiona, decided to take a last-minute trip to a cabin in the mountains. She mentioned that it was a solo retreat, a chance to unwind, but something felt off the moment she mentioned it. I didn't ask for details. Her privacy was important to her, and I respected that. We didn't keep tabs on each other. But as she packed her bag that evening, my mind wandered to strange places, places I hadn't even known existed within me. "I'll be fine. Just a couple of days," she said, throwing a casual smile my way. I nodded, trying to seem supportive, but something was gnawing at me. This sudden trip, this unusual sense of urgency, it all felt too scripted. I didn't know why, but it felt like the calm before the storm. After Fiona left, I couldn't shake the feeling of her absence. I started the night with the usual distractions: Netflix, a couple of beers, an endless scroll through the usual online noise. But nothing could quite fill the void. The silence was too loud. Around midnight, I checked my phone. No text, no call, no nothing. I wasn't expecting anything, but still, I couldn't help myself. I texted her, something simple: "Hope the trip's going well. Miss you." I stared at the screen for a few minutes, unsure if I would get a response. Then the phone buzzed. I jumped. "All good here. Don't worry, babe." It was such a standard reply that it almost felt too rehearsed. I read the message again and again, trying to convince myself it was nothing. But it didn't sit right. I pushed the thought away, telling myself I was just being paranoid. I tried to get some sleep, but it was impossible. Every hour felt like an eternity. Then, just when I thought I might drift off, the phone buzzed again. This time, it was a notification that she had shared a location with me. I opened the message, expecting to see the address of the cabin, or maybe a picture of her in front of the place, but it was something entirely different. It was a map with a pin placed on a remote area in the woods. I zoomed in, and my breath caught. The location wasn't the cabin. It was miles away from where I expected her to be. I sat up, heart racing. Why would she send me this? The address I had was a cozy, secluded spot, just like she'd mentioned. But this was somewhere else. My mind started to spin in a million directions. Why would she send me this? Was she lost? Was she somewhere she wasn't supposed to be? I looked at the timestamp. It was only 10 minutes ago. I didn't waste a second. I called her. It rang once, twice, 3 times. No answer. I hung up, feeling my pulse quicken, but tried again, hoping to hear her voice this time. It went straight to voicemail. My stomach churned. I couldn't sit still any longer. I grabbed my jacket and keys, ready to go out and find her. But just as I reached the door, the phone buzzed once more. Another message. But this one wasn't from Fiona. It was from an unknown number. "You shouldn't worry about her so much. She's fine. Just enjoying her time." I froze. The message was cryptic and cold. There was something about the way it was phrased that unsettled me. It was too familiar, too knowing, as if the sender had been watching us, listening to my every concern. My mind screamed at me, urging me to stop, to leave it alone, but the unease kept building. I stared at the screen, feeling a chill run through my spine. I had to know who this was. I couldn't just leave it. My fingers shook as I typed a response. "Who is this? What do you want from me?" Within seconds, the reply came. "It's not what you think. It's already too late." I felt the ground beneath me shift. What did that mean? What did they mean by too late? My mind was in a frenzy, trying to piece together the puzzle that suddenly felt too complicated to solve. Something was happening, something I couldn't see, but was being pulled into whether I liked it or not. I took a deep breath, the weight of the situation pressing down on me. No more guessing, no more waiting. I needed answers, and I would do whatever it took to find them. I could feel the sweat building on my palms as I stared at the message on my phone. "It's already too late." The words kept repeating in my head, like a broken record that wouldn't stop playing. I didn't know what to make of it. What did they mean by that? Who was this person, and why were they texting me now, at a time when I was already losing my grip on reality? My phone buzzed again. My heart skipped a beat, hoping it was Fiona calling to explain. But no, this time, it was a new message from the same unknown number. "She's not who you think she is." I stared at the screen, trying to comprehend what was happening. A cold shiver ran down my spine as I realized that whatever this was, it wasn't just a random, cryptic message. Someone knew something I didn't. Someone was toying with me, and I couldn't for the life of me figure out why. Was this some sort of prank? A sick joke? Or was it something darker? I sat there for a few minutes, staring at the screen, my mind spinning. I thought about calling her again, but after the last failed attempt, I wasn't sure I could take another round of voicemail. Instead, I decided to take a step back. Maybe I was overreacting. Maybe it was nothing. But the feeling in my gut told me otherwise. Something wasn't right. So, I did the only thing I could think of. I decided to go to the location. I couldn't just sit here and wait. I had to know where she was and what she was doing. My mind was a jumbled mess of fear, doubt, and confusion, but I knew one thing for sure. I needed answers. I threw on my shoes, grabbed my keys, and headed out the door. The night was cold, the streets were empty, and everything felt too quiet. As I drove, my mind raced with every possible scenario. What was Fiona really doing out there in the mountains? Who was this person who kept texting me, and what did they mean by too late? The questions were endless, but I had no answers. It was a long drive, a lonely one, and the further I got from home, the more unsettled I became. The air felt thick with tension, and the silence in the car only made it worse. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being led into something I wasn't prepared for. As I neared the area from the map, I noticed that the roads were getting rougher, less traveled. The trees surrounding me looked darker, almost ominous in the dim headlights of my car. I followed the winding road up the mountain, the GPS directing me to a spot just outside of town. It wasn't the cabin where I thought Fiona was staying. It was a remote area, deeper into the woods, hidden from view. A small part of me wanted to turn back, to pretend none of this was happening, but I couldn't. The need to know the truth was too strong. Eventually, I pulled up to a dirt path that seemed to lead to a clearing. The trees were thick here, and the ground was uneven, but there was a feeling of stillness in the air. It wasn't just quiet. It was the kind of silence that made your skin crawl. I parked the car and turned off the engine, sitting in the dark for a moment, just listening. The only sound was the rustling of the wind through the branches and the distant echo of what might have been an animal. But even that didn't bring me any comfort. I got out of the car and started walking down the path, my heart pounding in my chest. The closer I got to the clearing, the more I could feel my anxiety building. What was I going to find? Was Fiona out there? Was she alone? And why was I here, in the middle of nowhere, at this godforsaken hour, looking for something I wasn't sure I even wanted to find? As I stepped into the clearing, the first thing I noticed was the large, run-down cabin in the distance. It wasn't anything like the cozy getaway Fiona had described. It looked abandoned, with broken windows and overgrown weeds surrounding it. A chill ran through me, and my gut told me this was wrong, all wrong. I crept closer, my footsteps careful, trying to make as little noise as possible. My phone buzzed again. I glanced down. Another message. She's waiting. It's not too late to turn back. The words hit me like a punch in the stomach. She's waiting. What the hell did that mean? I couldn't turn back now. I had to know what was going on, even if it terrified me. I approached the door of the cabin, hesitant but determined. I took a deep breath and reached for the doorknob. It was cold to the touch, rusted and worn from years of neglect. I hesitated for a moment, then turned it, praying it wouldn't make too much noise. To my surprise, it creaked open with a slight push. Inside, it was dark, but the faint glow of a light from the back room caught my attention. I slowly walked inside, my footsteps echoing on the wooden floor. The air was musty, thick with the smell of mold and decay. But the light in the back room, someone was here. My heart raced as I approached the doorway. What I saw next completely shattered my perception of everything. I stood there frozen in the doorway, the faint glow of the light casting long shadows across the room. My heart pounded in my chest as I hesitated, unsure of what I was about to walk into. My breath caught in my throat, and for a moment, everything around me seemed to slow down. The air in the cabin was thick with tension, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched, even though I couldn't see anyone. The floor creaked beneath my feet as I took a cautious step forward, my eyes straining to make out the details of the room ahead. The light was coming from a small lamp on a wooden table in the corner. But what struck me immediately was the figure sitting in front of it. At first, I thought it was Fiona, but as I stepped closer, I saw it wasn't her. It was a man. He was sitting with his back to me, facing the lamp, and he was completely still. His posture was rigid, like he was waiting for something or someone. I swallowed hard, my mind racing. Who was this? Why was he here? And why did he feel like he belonged in this place? My instincts screamed at me to turn around and leave, but I couldn't. I needed answers. I had come this far, and I wasn't about to back down now. I stepped forward, my eyes locked on the man's figure. As I did, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was all wrong. The cabin, the messages, the feeling of being led into something I didn't understand. It all felt like a trap. A trap that I had willingly walked right into. Fiona, I called out, my voice shaking with a mix of fear and uncertainty. There was no response. The man didn't even move. I took another step closer, this time more cautiously, trying to keep my breathing steady. But just as I was about to say something else, the man finally turned his head. When he looked at me, my heart stopped. It wasn't the face I expected. This wasn't anyone I recognized. He was older than me, with salt and pepper hair and a cold, calculating expression that made my skin crawl. His eyes were dark, almost hollow, like there was nothing behind them but empty space. He didn't speak at first, just studied me with an unsettling intensity. "Who are you?" I managed to ask, my voice barely above a whisper. I could feel the tension building in the room, thickening with each passing second. The man's lips curled into a small, almost imperceptible smile, one that didn't reach his eyes. "You've been asking the wrong questions," he said, his voice low and smooth, almost too calm for the situation. "You should be asking why you're here." I felt a chill run through me. My mind was racing, trying to piece together what was happening. Why was this man here? And where was Fiona? This couldn't be a coincidence. The messages, the strange map, the way everything seemed to be pointing me here. It was all too orchestrated, too calculated. "I don't understand," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, though the fear was creeping in. "Where is Fiona? What have you done with her?" The man tilted his head slightly, as if considering my question. "Fiona is just fine," he said. "But you need to understand something. You've been a part of something much bigger than you realize. This trip, this whole weekend, it's not about her. It's about you." My stomach twisted at his words. I couldn't comprehend what he was saying. What did he mean it was about me? I was just a husband looking for his wife, right? I wasn't supposed to be part of any bigger plan. But the way he spoke, the confidence in his voice, it was like he knew something I didn't. "I don't know what you're talking about," I said, my voice growing more frantic. "I just want to find my wife. Please, tell me where she is." The man didn't answer right away. Instead, he looked at me for a long moment, his gaze piercing. Then, finally, he stood up slowly, his movements deliberate, as if he were in no rush. "You've already found her," he said softly. "But you're not going to like what you're about to see." A wave of dread washed over me as the man walked toward the back of the cabin, gesturing for me to follow. Something in my gut told me that whatever was waiting for me in that back room was not something I was prepared to face. But I couldn't stop myself. I had to know. I had come this far, and there was no turning back now. I followed him down a narrow hallway at the back of the cabin, the dim light flickering above us. The air grew colder as we approached a door at the end of the hall. The man opened it without hesitation, stepping aside to let me through. What I saw next shattered everything I thought I knew. There, lying on the floor in front of a small fire, was Fiona. But something was horribly wrong. She wasn't unconscious or injured, not physically. She was different. Her eyes were wide open, but they were empty, devoid of the warmth and life I had always seen in them. She was staring at nothing, as if lost in some deep, unfathomable thought. I felt my knees weaken as I took a step closer to her. "Fiona," I whispered, my voice trembling with disbelief. "What happened to you?" Her head turned slightly, her eyes locking onto mine. But there was no recognition in them. No warmth. No love. Just cold emptiness. "It's too late," she whispered, her voice hollow. "I'm not the person you think I am." The words sent a jolt through me, and I felt the floor slip beneath me. What was happening? What had they done to her? And what was all of this about? My mind spun, trying to make sense of it all. But nothing made sense anymore. And then, as I stood there in shock, the man's voice echoed in my ear. "Now, you see the truth. And it's already too late for you." The words hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. "It's already too late for you." I wanted to scream, to shake Fiona awake, to demand answers, but the words wouldn't come. My throat felt tight, and I couldn't breathe. What was happening to her? What was happening to me? I could feel the world spinning around me, but I couldn't make sense of it. Fiona's hollow stare was burning into me, and I felt like she was a stranger, someone I didn't recognize anymore. It wasn't just the emptiness in her eyes. It was the coldness in her voice when she spoke. It wasn't her. Not the woman I married. Not the woman I knew. It was as if someone or something had replaced her, and I was standing here, helpless, watching her slip away. The man, who had been standing silently behind me, took a step forward. I didn't want to look at him. I didn't want to hear any more from him. But he was the only one who could give me the answers I desperately needed. I turned toward him, the rage and confusion boiling over inside me. "What have you done to her?" I demanded, my voice trembling with the weight of my emotions. "Who the hell are you? And why the hell is she like this?" The man simply smiled, an unsettling, almost pitying expression on his face. "You still don't understand, do you? This isn't about her. It never was. It's about you." His voice was smooth, almost hypnotic, and every word seemed to carry an unspoken weight that made my skin crawl. "You've been living in the dark, trusting what you think you know. But now, you see the truth. You've been blind to it for far too long." I shook my head, feeling the walls close in around me. I couldn't make sense of his words. My mind screamed at me to leave, to run, to find a way to snap Fiona out of whatever hold this man, or whatever he was, had over her. But my legs felt like lead. I couldn't move. The man stepped closer, his eyes never leaving mine. "The truth is, you've been part of something far bigger than you could ever have imagined," he continued, his voice low and almost soothing. "You've been a pawn, caught in a game you didn't even realize you were playing." I couldn't take it anymore. I lunged forward, grabbing the man by his collar, my desperation overcoming my fear. "What game? What the hell are you talking about? What do you want from me?" His calm expression never wavered, not even a flicker of fear. He didn't seem fazed by my outburst. In fact, he almost looked amused. "What I want," he said, his voice quieter now, "is for you to understand. You're part of something that's been in motion long before you ever met Fiona. Long before you ever even heard of Jake. Long before you ever came here, to this cabin." I let go of him, my hands shaking as I stepped back. "Jake?" I muttered, the name suddenly clicking in my mind. "You know Jake." The man nodded slowly, his eyes darkening. "I know more than you could ever imagine. And so does Fiona. But she's been too afraid to tell you. Too afraid to wake you up." He took another step closer, and I felt an involuntary shiver run down my spine. She knew this day would come. She knew you'd have to face the truth. But she wasn't ready for you to understand it. And now here we are. Now, you'll see what you've been blind to all along. I didn't know what to say. My mind was spinning, overwhelmed by everything he was saying. This couldn't be real. It couldn't be happening. How had it gotten to this point? How had I ended up in this nightmare, standing in this decaying cabin with a man who knew too much, watching my wife slip further and further away from me? "Why is she like this?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper now. I felt helpless, lost. "What have you done to her? What happened to her?" The man's smile deepened, but his eyes remained cold. "She's not the same person anymore, not after everything she's learned. She's been part of this for years. And you," he pointed directly at me, "you're the last piece of the puzzle, the final step. But you weren't supposed to be here. You weren't supposed to find out like this." I felt the weight of his words crash into me. Everything I thought I knew about Fiona, about us, was a lie. It wasn't just her, it was me too. We were both caught up in something that neither of us fully understood. But now it was too late to turn back. There was no going back to the way things were. I had already crossed a line, and now I was tangled in a web that had been carefully woven around me, and I didn't even know how or when it had started. "What happens now?" I asked, barely able to choke out the words. "What do you want from me?" The man's expression grew darker, his voice dropping even lower. "What happens now is up to you. You can either join us, or you can walk away. But you won't walk away without consequences. Not after you've seen the truth. Not after you've seen what's really been going on." I didn't know what to say. My mind was reeling, and every part of me screamed to leave, to run far away from this twisted nightmare. But I couldn't. Something held me there. Something deep inside me knew that I couldn't just walk away. I had to know the truth, no matter the cost. Fiona, still sitting motionless on the floor, looked up at me again. Her eyes were empty, distant. But now, there was something else, something that flickered in her gaze. A silent plea. A glimpse of the woman I once knew, trapped behind the coldness. She wasn't gone, not completely. But the question was, could I save her? Or was it already too late for both of us? The man's voice cut through the silence, almost as if he were reading my thoughts. You can try to save her if you want, but you'll have to face the consequences. You can't change the past. You can't change what's already been done. I stood there, paralyzed. The world around me felt like it was closing in, and I was caught in the middle of a nightmare with no way out. The air around me grew colder, more suffocating with every word he spoke. My mind was desperately trying to process what I was hearing, but it felt like I was drowning in a sea of confusion. "Join us," he had said, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. But how could I join them? Who were they? And what had happened to Fiona? I took a shaky step back, my body trembling as I looked at the man who seemed to know everything about me, everything about my wife. The words, "It's too late," echoed in my mind, each one slicing deeper than the last. There was no way I could simply accept what he was saying. This was insanity. My mind refused to believe it. But the evidence was in front of me. The cabin, the strange location, the cryptic messages, Fiona's unrecognizable state. It all pointed to something far darker than I was willing to accept. I turned to look at her again, hoping, praying, that somehow she would wake up, that the woman I had spent years with would return to me. But when our eyes met, I saw only the emptiness. She was still there physically, but it was like a part of her soul had been taken, replaced with something cold, something I couldn't understand. My chest tightened as I thought about the years we had spent together, the dreams, the future we had planned. Was all of that just an illusion? Had she been a part of this twisted web the entire time? The man watched me, his eyes calculating, waiting for me to absorb everything. "You want to know the truth," he said, his voice almost a whisper now, as though sharing a secret. "You're here because you were always meant to be here. You think it's just bad luck or coincidence, but it's not. It's all part of the plan. A plan that's been in motion for much longer than you realize." I felt a surge of anger rise within me, the desperation building. "What plan?" I demanded, my voice hoarse. "What the hell are you talking about? What is this? What are you and Fiona involved in?" He stepped forward, unfazed by my outburst, and placed a hand on my shoulder, the touch cold and unfeeling. "It's something much bigger than either of you, something far older and more powerful than you could ever imagine. You've been caught in it from the start, whether you knew it or not. Fiona, Jake, even you're all connected to this. You're all part of something that's been set into motion long before you ever met." I felt like I was going to suffocate. "Jake? You know Jake?" I stammered, the name sending a ripple through my thoughts. "Why him? Why is he involved in all of this?" The man's lips curled into a small smile, his eyes glinting with something I couldn't quite place. "Jake has always been a part of it. He was never just her ex, never just some old friend. He's a key player. But you're different. You were never supposed to find out, but now you have, and there's no going back." I shook my head, trying to process the enormity of his words. This couldn't be real. It had to be some sick joke. But the way he spoke, so calm, so sure of himself, it made me question everything. Was there truth in what he was saying? Was Fiona involved in something far darker than I ever imagined? "You're not the man I thought you were," I said, my voice breaking. I was struggling to hold on to my sanity. "You're just some sick bastard who's taken my wife, and you're trying to twist everything around me." The man didn't flinch at my accusation. He merely stepped back, his face expressionless. "I'm not the villain in your story, my friend. I'm just the messenger. The truth is, you've been blind for too long. But now you see it. Now you understand." I felt my legs give way beneath me. I stumbled and caught myself on the nearest table, feeling dizzy, like the room was spinning out of control. The weight of everything, the lies, the manipulation, the overwhelming sense of being caught in something I couldn't escape, was too much. I needed answers. I needed to fix this. But how? "Tell me what you want from me," I begged, the desperation finally breaking through. "I'll do anything, just tell me what's going on." The man's face softened slightly, though there was no kindness in his expression. "What I want from you is simple," he said, his tone almost gentle now. "I want you to see what's been hidden from you. I want you to understand why you're here, and why it had to be this way." He turned slowly, walking towards the window, as if the whole scene were some casual conversation, as if my world weren't falling apart right in front of me. He looked out into the darkness beyond, his voice barely rising above a whisper. You've always been part of this, whether you knew it or not. Everything you've done, every choice you've made, has led you here. The life you thought you had, the life you built with Fiona, it was never yours to control. It was all part of the plan. A plan that's been unfolding for decades. I took a shaky step forward, my heart pounding in my chest. What are you saying? My voice cracked. You're saying none of this was real? That everything we've been through, every moment, was just some game? The man turned back to face me, his eyes cold and unreadable. You have no idea how deep this goes, he said, his voice low, almost regretful. But you will. Soon, you'll see everything. All the pieces will fall into place. And then, maybe, you'll understand. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. Every part of me wanted to run, to escape this nightmare, but I couldn't. It felt like my mind was being pulled in 1,000 different directions, each new revelation only adding more chaos to the storm inside me. What was the truth? What was real? And most importantly, what had happened to Fiona? I have to save her, I whispered, more to myself than to anyone else. But the man's next words cut through the silence like a knife. She's already gone, my friend. She's not the woman you knew anymore. And neither are you. His words were a death sentence, a final confirmation of everything I had feared. It was too late. Too late for Fiona. Too late for me. There was no turning back now. The air in the cabin grew colder still, the weight of the man's words pressing down on me like a heavy blanket. She's already gone. The statement echoed in my mind, ringing louder with each passing second. I couldn't accept it, couldn't bring myself to believe that the woman I loved, the woman I had spent years with, was no longer there. But the emptiness in her eyes, the coldness in her voice, everything about her had changed. It was like I was standing on the edge of a cliff, staring down into a bottomless pit. And the only thing I could do was fall. I turned back to Fiona, her blank stare still fixed on me, her body unmoving. My heart ached. Fiona, I whispered, almost pleading. Please, wake up. Please, come back to me. But there was no response. She didn't even blink. It was like she couldn't hear me. Or worse, like she didn't want to. The man's voice interrupted my thoughts, cutting through the silence like a blade. She can't hear you. She's beyond your reach now. He took a slow, deliberate step toward me. You have to understand something. This isn't just about her. It's about you. And the choices you're going to have to make now. I turned to face him, fury rising in my chest. Choices? What choices? My voice was shaking, but I didn't care. You're telling me my wife is gone, that she's been taken from me, and now you're talking about choices? What do you want from me? The man's gaze softened, though it was far from comforting. I'm not your enemy, he said. I'm here to show you the truth. You need to understand what's really happening before it's too late for you, too. I could feel the anger bubbling up inside me, but I knew I had to stay focused. I had to get answers. I had to find a way to get Fiona back. What's happening? I demanded. Tell me what the hell is going on. Why is she like this? Why are you involved? He didn't answer right away. Instead, he glanced at Fiona, his expression unreadable. It started a long time ago, he said, his voice distant, almost as if he were speaking to himself. The moment she made her choice, everything shifted. And you, by extension, were pulled into it. You were never meant to know the truth. But now you do. Her choice. I repeated, confusion clouding my thoughts. What choice? The man met my gaze, his eyes piercing, almost predatory. The choice to become part of something bigger than herself. Something that goes beyond the ordinary. Something that changes people, alters their very essence. He took another step toward me. Fiona made that choice years ago. And now, it's your turn. I felt my knees weaken. The words were too much to process. I had to fight to keep my composure. What are you talking about? You're saying she made some kind of deal? With you? With whoever you are. My voice was hoarse, desperate for clarity. And now you want me to make the same choice? The man nodded slowly, as if this was all inevitable. In a sense, yes. You're at a crossroads. You can choose to leave, forget everything you've seen here, go back to your life and pretend none of this ever happened. Or, he trailed off, his smile darkening. Or you can join us. Embrace the truth. Embrace the power that comes with it. My head was spinning. This couldn't be real. None of this could be real. Fiona, the woman I had built my life with, had been living a lie this entire time. And now I was being asked to make a choice I didn't even understand. No, I said, my voice shaking with a mix of fear and defiance. I won't join you. I won't be a part of whatever this is. You took her from me, and I will find a way to get her back. The man's face darkened, his eyes narrowing as he took a step closer. You don't understand, he said, his voice low and dangerous. You're already part of this. You always have been. You've been a piece of the puzzle from the very beginning. And now that you've seen the truth, there's no going back. The choice isn't yours anymore. I took a step back, my mind racing. What was he saying? How could I have been part of something I didn't even know existed? My entire life felt like it was slipping through my fingers, like I was living in a nightmare I couldn't escape from. No, I repeated, shaking my head in disbelief. I don't care what you say. I won't be part of this. I won't let you take her. I'll find another way. The man's expression softened for a moment, almost as if he were pitying me. You still don't understand, he said quietly. The truth is, you've already lost her. You're not going to get her back. Not in the way you think. You can't undo what's been done. I looked at Fiona, my heart breaking. This wasn't the woman I knew. This wasn't the woman I loved. What had happened to her? What had they done to her? Please, I whispered, my voice cracking. Please, tell me how to save her. I'll do anything. The man's eyes softened for a brief second, but then he shook his head. You can't save her, he said, his voice cold once again. She's already been changed. And you're too far gone to go back to the life you once knew. This is your reality now. I felt the ground beneath me shift. I wanted to scream, to fight back, but I didn't know where to begin. I was trapped in a nightmare I couldn't wake up from, and every attempt to escape only pulled me deeper into it. The man's words echoed in my mind, but one thought screamed louder than the rest. I couldn't give up on Fiona. No matter what he said, I wouldn't stop until I found a way to save her. I looked at her one last time, feeling an overwhelming sense of grief, regret, and hopelessness. But I couldn't turn away. Not yet. The silence in the cabin was suffocating, a heavy weight that pressed down on me with every passing second. I stood there, staring at Fiona, whose vacant expression seemed to mirror the emptiness in my heart. The man's words echoed in my mind like a mantra, relentless and unforgiving. You can't save her. She's already been changed. The finality in his voice sent a shiver down my spine, but it wasn't just the fear that made my hands shake. It was the realization that perhaps he was right. What had happened to Fiona? What had she become? I couldn't accept it. I refused to. I had spent years building a life with this woman, a life filled with love and trust, and now it felt like it had all been ripped away in an instant. My world was crumbling around me, and all I had left was the cold, unfeeling man in front of me and the lifeless shell of the woman I once knew. Why? I managed to croak, my voice hoarse with desperation. Why did you do this to her? To us? The man didn't immediately respond. Instead, he stepped toward Fiona, his movements slow, deliberate. He looked at her, and then back at me, his gaze cold and calculating. This isn't about us, he said. This isn't about what you thought was a happy life. This is bigger than you, bigger than her. I couldn't stop myself. The anger surged up inside me, and before I could think, I was charging toward him, my hands outstretched, ready to do whatever it took to make him answer for what he had done. But as quickly as the fury came, it was gone. I was suddenly aware of how weak I felt, how powerless I was in the face of this man and whatever dark forces he represented. He didn't flinch. He didn't even move when I stopped just inches away from him. His eyes bored into mine, and for the first time, I saw something shift in his expression. Something almost regretful. You're still fighting it, he said, his voice softer now. You're still trying to hold on to a version of reality that no longer exists. But the truth is, you're part of something you can't undo. You've been chosen. I took a step back, my mind racing, trying to process his words. Chosen? I repeated, confusion clouding my thoughts. What does that mean? Chosen for what? His lips curled into a thin smile, one that didn't reach his eyes. Chosen to be part of a legacy that spans centuries. And Fiona? She's been part of it for far longer than you can imagine. But you're the final piece of the puzzle. I felt my chest tighten, the weight of his words sinking in. A legacy? Centuries? What was he talking about? How could I be part of something I didn't even understand? No, I whispered, shaking my head in disbelief. No, this is insane. I'm just a man who loves his wife. This isn't real." He didn't seem surprised by my reaction. He only nodded slowly, as if he had expected this kind of resistance. "Of course you don't understand. That's the whole point. You were never supposed to know. But now you do." His gaze darkened, and for a moment, I could see the full extent of the darkness in his eyes. "And now that you've seen, you can't unsee. You've crossed a line. There's no turning back." I backed away from him, my heart racing. The cabin seemed to close in around me, the walls pressing in as I struggled to make sense of everything he was saying. I had crossed a line? What line? I had never chosen any of this. I had never asked for any of this. All I wanted was my wife back. But now she was a shell of the woman she had been, and I was trapped in a world I didn't understand, surrounded by people who seemed to know more about me than I did. "You have a choice," the man continued, his voice still calm, still unshaken. "You can accept what's happened, embrace the reality that you're part of something far bigger than yourself, or you can fight it. But know this, fighting it won't bring her back. It won't bring your old life back." I felt my chest constrict as I looked at Fiona again. The sight of her, sitting motionless on the floor, was like a knife to my heart. This wasn't the woman I knew. This wasn't the woman I loved. Whatever had happened to her, whatever grip this man and his twisted game had on her, it had taken everything from me. "Please," I whispered, more to myself than to anyone else. "Please don't let this be the end." The man stepped forward, his eyes narrowing. "It's already too late for that," he said softly, as if trying to soften the blow. "You've already made your choice, even if you don't realize it yet. You've crossed the threshold. Now, you'll have to live with the consequences." The air in the cabin felt even colder now, the silence almost suffocating. I could hear the faint hum of the wind outside, the only sound in a world that had suddenly turned upside down. My thoughts were swirling, my mind a whirlwind of questions and fear. How could I be a part of something I didn't even understand? What had happened to Fiona? And most importantly, what would happen to me now? I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. "I won't join you," I said, my voice firm despite the fear and doubt gnawing at me. "I won't be a part of whatever you're trying to do." The man's smile didn't falter, but there was something else in his eyes, something darker, something almost predatory. "You don't have a choice," he said simply. "You've already made it. And now, there's nothing you can do to change it." His words sent a chill down my spine, but I wasn't ready to give up yet. I wouldn't let them win. I wouldn't let Fiona slip away without a fight. I turned to her one last time, my heart breaking as I looked at the empty shell of the woman I loved. But there was still something in her eyes. Something that told me she wasn't completely lost. There was still a chance. There had to be. But time was running out. And every second I spent standing there, frozen in fear, brought me closer to a fate I couldn't control. The air in the cabin was thick with tension, every word the man spoke hanging like a heavy fog in the room. His cold, calculating gaze never left me, and as much as I wanted to break free from the grip of his words, I knew something had to change. Fiona wasn't lost, at least, not completely. There had to be a way to bring her back. I couldn't let this man win. Not now. Not after everything we had been through together. I looked back at Fiona, her blank stare still locked onto mine. It was almost as if she were trapped, like a prisoner inside her own mind. But I knew that deep down, she was still there. Somewhere. She had to be. I couldn't give up on her. Not after everything. Not after the years we spent building a life together. "You're wrong," I said, my voice steadier than before. "I don't care what you say. I don't care what you think I'm a part of. I'm going to fight for her, for us. I'll find a way to bring her back." The man laughed softly, a low, mocking sound that echoed through the cabin. "You're still so naive. You don't understand what you're up against. You think you can fight it, but it's already too late." But there was something in his eyes, a flicker of doubt, just for a moment. And in that moment, something clicked inside me. I had spent so much time thinking I was powerless, that the game was already decided. But maybe it wasn't. Maybe the one thing this man and his twisted legacy didn't understand was love, the kind of love that could defy all the darkness in the world. I took a deep breath and stepped closer to Fiona, my hand trembling as I reached out to touch her arm. The moment my skin made contact with hers, something shifted. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but it was there. I could feel a faint warmth beneath her cold exterior. She was still there, and I wasn't going to let go. "Fiona," I whispered, my voice filled with desperation and hope. I know you're in there. Please, come back to me. Please, fight with me. The man watched silently, his face unreadable, but I didn't care. I focused only on Fiona, on the woman I loved. I know you're scared. I know you've been through things that I'll never understand, but I'm here. I'll always be here. I'm not leaving you. I won't let you go. For a long, agonizing moment, there was nothing. Just the soft crackling of the fire in the corner and the distant hum of the wind outside. But then, slowly, her eyes blinked. Once, twice, and then, something else, her hand, trembling, slowly lifted, and for the first time in what felt like forever, she made eye contact with me. It was faint at first, but I could see it. The faintest glimmer of recognition. James. Her voice was barely a whisper, a soft rasp, but it was enough. It was her. It was my Fiona. Tears welled up in my eyes as I took her hand in mine. Fiona, you're back. You're here. She blinked again, her breath shallow, but there was life in her eyes now, real life. Not the empty, vacant stare from before. The fear in her eyes was still there, but it was fading, replaced by something stronger. Something I hadn't seen in what felt like a lifetime. I'm sorry, she whispered, her voice trembling. I didn't want to lose you. I squeezed her hand, relief flooding through me. You didn't lose me. I'll never leave you. I promise. The man stood in silence, watching us, his face unreadable. But there was something in his expression now that wasn't there before. Something like frustration. The power he had over us was slipping away, and he knew it. You can't undo what's been done, he said, his voice tense now. She's already made her choice. But Fiona, with a strength I hadn't seen in her for so long, shook her head. No, she said, her voice growing stronger. I choose to fight. I choose him. I choose us. The man's eyes narrowed, but I could feel the change in the air, like something had shifted, like the grip he had on us was weakening, unraveling. And then, without another word, he turned and walked toward the door, his footsteps heavy and slow. Before he left, he looked back at us one last time, his expression dark and resigned. This isn't over, he said, his voice low. But for now, you've won. And with that, he was gone. Fiona and I were alone. It was over. We had won. Together. I pulled her into my arms, holding her tightly, feeling the warmth of her body against mine. I'm here, I whispered. I'll always be here. And we'll get through this. We'll face whatever comes next, together. She nodded into my chest, her tears soaking my shirt. But this time, they were tears of relief, of release. Not of fear, not of loss. For the first time in a long time, I could feel the hope in my heart, the hope that had almost been extinguished. And as the fire crackled softly in the background, I realized something. Love wasn't just about what you could see or touch. It was the invisible bond that tied us together, that made us stronger than anything we could face. And no matter what came next, no matter what challenges we would face in the future, I knew we would face them side by side. The worst was over. We had won. And now, we could start over. Together.